MCQ 23 continues on homeostasis. Now this is the core idea behind homeostasis, which is we started off by looking at a stimulus. Now the stimulus could be done externally or internally, and the stimulus will often then give rise to what we call as the initial change to the body system. Now we want to combat this initial change such that we can actually mitigate any form of external or even internal fluctuation. So that particular initial change will be detected by the brain, in this case here the hypothalamus. And hypothalamus, upon detecting all these temperature changes or even any form of biological changes itself, we will then send out signals. So the signals usually come in the form of nervous impulses. And sometimes, example, if let's say it was blood glucose that's being changed, it could also come in the form of hormone as a chemical messenger. Now they will arrive at the target organs, and upon instructions via the nervous impulse or the hormones, the target organs will initiate corrective mechanism. The whole purpose of the corrective mechanism is to bring about an opposite change towards an initial change. So I'll just write this out in pink. Opposite change to an initial change. And the initial change is the actual initial stimulus. So this allowed us to restore back towards physiological conditions. And with that, we have achieved negative feedback. Now this negative feedback itself, once we have restored back to the physiological conditions, we'll send signal back towards the hypothalamus. And again, the nervous impulse that was originally sent out by the hypothalamus, or the hormones that was actually sent out by the endocrine gland that was commanded by the hypothalamus, will then cease. And from that, the corrective mechanisms that was initially initiated by the target organs will also cease to prevent overcorrection. So the core idea here of negative feedback always relies on an opposite change towards an initial change. So verbally itself, if the initial change was an increase in body temperature, negative feedback would then dictate that we're looking for an opposite change, which is the cooling of the body temperature back towards the basal or physiological level. So the question here is looking at the effects of negative feedback and opposite change to the initial change. So at A and D itself, we'll say that this is considered to be the stimulus, or we can say of it as the initial change. So A and D is out. And this itself has a detector, and it measures all those effects. And with that, you can see that with an increasing level, the opposite change should be a decreasing level. It should be a decreasing level. So B seems to be aligned with the initial change of increase and opposite change of decreasing. But if you take a look at D, it decreased, but at option C, it has decreased as well. Now this is not considered to be as that of your negative feedback, but rather an effect of positive feedback, whereby it actually enhances the original initial change. Now in O-level biology is a little bit rare, we don't really talk about positive feedback, but the closest that you can relate to is the process of clotting. Once the platelet has released thrombokinase and the whole clotting cascade started, it will just get faster and faster. Again, this is critical because we want clotting to be as fast as possible to prevent any form of leakage of blood plasma. So I'll then say that back to my normal level itself, but then say that B could be the answer here because it decreases an increasing level at the start. Very much the same as bringing about an opposite change towards an initial change.